Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm just going to do a brief video for taxation policies. This is an area that's come up, and there's been a lot of spin from both Mulcair and Justin Trudeau in regards to the various policies, because the biggest focus they've been on is this income tax splitting, which is really the family tax credit. I'm going to walk you through the different policies that Stephen Harper has brought in over his tenure in power. Now, this is a pyramid. Basically what you're hearing about the income tax splitting, which is really a new way to look at the family, how to better treat the family on a taxation basis. It basically replaces the non-refundable tax process where you could basically write off kids. This is basically looking at ways to kind of share income, so that if you have a single income earner where the wife stays at home, it allows you to basically maximize that type of income. And I'll go into more specific details about income tax splitting, or as betterly known as family tax credit. We'll talk about basically other things that Mr. Harper brought in. He brought a working tax credit in to help low income earners, so basically to give a little bit more taxation back to them. He also reduced the GST, as Thomas Mulcair has said specifically that the GST is a regressive tax and he would not hike it. So you've never heard Mulcair once speak out that Harper's reduced that, which has helped the low to middle class Canadians. And actually, in general, the tax cuts between personal tax and the GST have actually put $30 billion into people's pockets. That's based on the PBO report, Parliament Budget Officer's report, and you're more than welcome to check that out. He's brought in pension splitting, so seniors can turn around and split income between them. This is another option that's not discussed very much. He brought in tax-free savings accounts to basically encourage people to save money. He's brought in transit or other credits to support people to using mass transit. He's brought in fitness credit to promote physical fitness. Now, some of these are what we call as boutique taxes. Basically, the amount's usually small amount, but it makes people happy. So when usually you bring this in, it's usually because you've consulted people, and that's a lot of times what Harper takes a lot of hits for. He doesn't consult people, and that's where you're getting the wrong message. Now, Stephen Harper has no control over when governments come in. They can't manage their own fiscal house and bring in taxes. Like Ontario brought in a health premium tax, with the money was supposed to go through health care and never did. It went into general revenue. Some provinces like Manitoba have hiked their provincial sales tax, which also doesn't help the low to middle income Canadians. BC brought in a carbon tax. Now, it's supposed to be revenue neutral. What they did is they offset the tax cost, the carbon tax, with lower taxation for corporate and personal taxes. But in essence, it still raised the cost, and it's still pretty expensive to live in Vancouver. Let's talk about a single person. Okay. When Stephen Harper basically gave back about $1,500 per year, that single person's being hit with a health premium. A single person might be hit with hydro rates. Now, if we say that, along with the GST and hydro and other cuts, basically where Harper has given back, the provinces have taken about 85% of that back. Now you're going to probably say, well, that's all part of downloading. No, it's not. It's also poor decisions made by provincial governments when implementing policies or setting priorities. If you really want to see, in particular case Ontario, go look at the size of their public sector. They grew the public sector payroll faster than they grew the private sector. That's what basically your tax dollars are going in to support. This shows you a family. Again, what it's showing you in the health care and the hydro rates and the gas tax. Again, where Harper gave it back, the provinces took it away. Now let's talk about the family tax credit versus non-refundable. Thomas Mulcair wants to get rid of that family tax credit, and then he has to replace it, because basically the non-refundable tax credit system has been replaced. So in essence, when I went back to the Center of Policy Alternatives, it looks like to me, just for the child deduction on a non-refundable tax credit, it's about $1.5 billion. That's basically has been substituted with the $2.2 billion family tax credit. Yet you don't hear Thomas Mulcair talk about that. So if he says to you that he's going to cut or eliminate the 2.2 income tax splitting, then you should ask yourself how, and what's going to happen to the family, and how are they going to be treated under his taxation system, because he's yet to be clear on that, and that's something you should be asking yourself, because he tries to champion himself as a middle class person, but yet his tax policies are not aligning. Now, this is another fallacy. The family tax credit actually benefits a good chunk of the people making 60 to 128K. That's where both maximum in terms of the income tax. This is based on the Minister of Finance and the Parliamentary Budget Officer. So basically, guess what? That doesn't align. Now, we've seen constant comment about growth in between income inequality. Now, one of the ways to do that is look at tax policies. And part of the family tax credit was to kind of help people at different income levels to spread things around. So that kind of helps you on a tax perspective. And that's what one of the CAs or CPA has said, that it's actually helped reduce some of that income inequality. Now, let's talk about the top 1%, because they're cannon fodder for the NDP. The top 1% pays about 18% of the federal tax. And guess what? If you hike their percentage, guess what? They don't pay more taxes, okay? They find ways within the Income Tax Act, within their accountants and lawyers, to minimize their tax. So hiking to the top 1% doesn't guarantee that a windfall for you. And that's a misnomer that Thomas Mulcair is trying to sell you on, because it doesn't work. Now let's talk about tax-free savings account. This is another area that Thomas Mulcair is hammered on. And it seems to me he wants to have access to your money, because if you listen to him, he's talking about a CPP enhancement. He's not talking about you to have more control over your money. The tax-free savings accounts are a good idea, and they've actually benefited low to middle income Canadians. The next chart will show you, like if you look at the bulk of the holdings, 82% of the holdings in tax-free savings accounts are with people that are making 80,000 K or less. So how is that not benefiting the middle class? It is benefiting them, because if you look at the way RSPs work, you can only contribute to them at a certain percentage. This is $5,000 for everybody. So you can see where if you can't maximize with an RSP, you can at least put it in the savings. The other thing is you take money from RSP, it's taxable. So this actually helps people save and have access to money. Second point I want to make, Harper has done great work on seniors. He's brought in income tax splitting, he's brought in the caregiver tax, he's brought in some improvements to the guaranteed income supplement and other programs to support seniors. What he has no control over is bad policies dictated by Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty when they raised hydro. Seniors have to make a choice between hydro or putting food on the table. That has absolutely nothing to do with Harper. So if you hear seniors complaining, I think you need to have them focus on where they're focusing their efforts on, and it should be at the provincial governments. This is just a comment from basically talking about the seniors here from Susan Ng. She's over that. She actually likes what happened in the last budget from the RIFs, which are the Retirement Investment Fund, how seniors can have more access to it. She also likes the comment that it's not just helping the wealthy, and look what's happening. She said 2.7 million seniors, or 60% of them, have less than 40% income. And guess what? A good chunk of them are using tax-free savings accounts. Yet you never hear that from Mulcair. Let's talk about the middle class. This is constantly talked about it, and I won't spend a lot of time here, but Canada is one of the richest middle class in the world. And this is what some of these links will actually show you in terms of the benefits. This actually shows you a little bit more about statements on what's impacted middle class over the last few years, from delisting of OHIP services, the OAS issues. This is just talking about different issues in terms of carbon pricing, internet taxation, corporate taxation, that you're more than welcome to look at. This gives you a little bit more links to income tax splitting, just to understand a bit more about the policies. This one I want to just spend a couple minutes here. There's a great video if you want to see things here. Laura Ingram is actually a pretty good announcer. She did a meeting with a guy, and they're talking about the middle class. And guess what? She applauded Stephen Harper. You don't have to take me at face value, but you can look at some of these videos to get a good take on what's actually happening in the middle class. Now, my question to you is, when you hear all the rhetoric back and forth from Mulcair or even Justin Trudeau, you should ask yourself, what's the validity of their statements? Because honestly, if they tell you that basically they're further middle class, then ask them, why are they imposing a cap and trade? Why are they looking at CPP enhancements? And why are they promoting policies that won't bring in foreign direct investment or help development of resources or expand exports? Because those are critical aspects if you're going to drive an economy.